Good evening to all. Welcome to the second open house meeting for the North Kitsap Service Center. I have our consultant OTAC on board to discuss the project to date with all. A couple housekeeping items before we get started. This meeting is being recorded on Zoom. After the meeting, it'll be available to you on the county's webpage as shown at the top there. We ask we're keeping everybody muted during the meeting just for clarity's sake. If you have questions, we ask that you enter them into the question answer section of your page, or wait until the end of the presentation and we'll have a question answer session then. As far as Title VI goes, if there is anybody there or anybody you know of that needs an interpreter or translation services, we can provide that to you as well. Next slide. So as mentioned, we will have a question answer session at the end. During the last meeting, there was some little frustration that we didn't provide enough time. We have a lot more information to share this time, so we're going to provide as much time as we need to answer your questions at the end. There is a question answer box, I believe, on the web page, certainly on our web page, for follow-on questions if they come to mind after the meeting. You can see here you have two options for questions. You can raise your hand, or you can type your question in the dialog box. For those who are calling in, if you dial *9 on your keypad, you'll be able to comment. Next page. So again, this is the second open house. Our first open house was last April. We were just starting off at that time. We didn't have a whole lot of information except background, how we chose that site, what our plan was moving forward. We have gathered quite a bit of information that we're excited to share with you today that'll answer some of your questions, maybe pose others. So we're looking forward to discussing this with you and receiving feedback. Next page. So introductions from the county. We have Commissioner Gilder on board, Andrew Nelson, the Director of Public Works, Joe Rutan, the Assistant Director, who is also our County Engineer, Chris Piercy, our Solid Waste Manager, Keith Swearingen, I believe, is on board as well. He's our Equipment Services Manager. And then we have Irick O'Neill and Lauren Liming. They're both public outreach employees. With OTAC, the consultant, we have Jeff Massey. He's our Project Manager. Christina Hayworth is public information planning policy individual. Mark Shelby is a landscape architect. And I think David Nightingale is in attendance. He's with Special Waste Services. They're a consultant that specializes in development and construction of household hazardous waste type facilities. So with all that said, I'll turn it over to Jeff Massey with OTAC to present information to you.
Good evening, folks. So Jeff Massey, Senior Project Manager with OTAC. So the county hired us to assist them develop this project. So Jacques done the introductions. So the agenda for tonight is to do a project overview, talk about the process to date, then talk about next steps, and as Jacques mentioned before, we'll have a question and answer period at the end. So an overview of the North Kitsap Service Center consists of two main things: the road maintenance and operations facility and the household hazardous waste facility. So when it comes to the road operations, you've got administration buildings that house maintenance staff for vehicles, road operations and maintenance staff. You've got equipment shops so that the maintenance staff can maintain vehicles. You've got storage, so you've got like storage for materials that road maintenance uses. Could be guardrail, could be paint, could be all the different things they need to do their job. It's got covered parking for equipment that's susceptible to ultraviolet degradation of like hydraulic hoses, like an excavator. Also some heated parking for equipment that's susceptible to freezing, like street sweepers. And then you've got the bulk storage area where you keep the materials that are typically hauled by dump trucks. And we'll show a picture of this stuff later so you can better visualize it. So the household hazardous waste facility, that is run by county staff. It's visited by the citizens to properly dispose of household hazardous waste. It could include flammables, cleaners, pesticides, those types of things, pesticides in small quantities. And so it's got the collection pads where citizens bring their household hazardous waste. The county staff takes them, take them inside, process them as may be needed. They store it until the vendor can come and haul it away for ultimate disposal. So that's the description. Next slide, please. So this is the schedule that we showed back in our first open house back in April. That time we were coming around to finishing the data collection analysis phase. As you'll see here in the blue Gantt bar chart, we're in the site planning phase. We're nearing the end of that phase here in August. And here's the subsequent phases. We'll get in this a little more detail, 30% design, 60, 90 final design, and the permitting that goes in between there. Next slide, please. So the first phase we talked about, data collection analysis phase, that's pretty much completed. So the deliverables just a fancy word for you deliver reports, technical memoranda. So the completed deliverables are the preliminary geotechnical engineering report, conceptual hydrogeologic model report, critical area study, cultural resources assessment, and the zoning memorandum. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the key findings in each of those reports and memoranda. So you may have some questions. Again, we can try and address them at the end. I am not the technical expert on all these discipline reports, but I do have an understanding of quite a bit. And these reports will be on the county project website, so you can look at them in more detail. Next, please. So the preliminary geotechnical engineering report is prepared by Aspect Consulting. They're the geotechnical engineer who's on the OTAC team. So the findings were the site is covered with shallow topsoil atop Vashon Till. Vashon Till is a low permeable soil. Water doesn't travel through it very fast at all. So one of the key findings, it's not really suitable for stormwater infiltration, which is a preferred method to basically convey stormwater once it's processed on site. From a structural standpoint, foundations can be conventional. It's good for building foundations and other slabs. Typically excavate down about 3 to 5 feet below ground surface. That's what BGS stands for. And the site soils can be used as structural fill. So there'd be cut and fill happening on the site. So excavated materials can be used as fill, provided they meet the 7% optimum moisture. So we're going to have to direct the contractor during construction to process those soils accordingly, get them to the optimum moisture. Some of the soils are up to 24% moisture now before the soils are placed and compacted and graded. Next. So the conceptual hydrogeologic model report. Again, it was prepared by Aspect Consulting. It informs of engineering design, much like the geotechnical report, from a little bit different perspective. So it used the same 8 test pits, the 3 soil borings that were used for the geotechnical report. Gets a little bit different data, plus it uses publicly available regional data. So what this picture represents is you see the kind of iron-shaped outline of the project site. And then there's those dots around it that represent publicly available well-logged data. I think it's kept by the Department of Ecology. And then the soils there are hydraulically restrictive. It's kind of a hydrogeologic way of saying that. They're low permeable soils, as described before, about 35 to 50 feet thick. And there's future site activities that will require BMPs, otherwise known as best management practices, to protect the aquifer. So I might go over just a couple of those. So secondary containment and leak detection is required for petroleum tanks, above grade petroleum tanks. The moderate risk waste facility, it needs fire suppression system. In the unlikely event of a fire in the future, it needs to hold about an hour's worth of fire suppression water, about 15,000 gallons. So there'll be a tank to hold that water. So there's other tanks going to be on site, you know, such as diesel exhaust fluid, chip seal tank, brine tanks, salt. So the containment needs to be appropriate for those uses. Vehicle wash rack, it's going to use recycled water, much like commercial car washes. And so the recycled water, when it's condensed down to the real contaminants and sediments, that'll be hauled off. And the on-site sewage system, septic system, will need to follow Department of Health, Washington State Department of Health guidelines and requirements. And the stormwater itself, the stormwater that's collected on site, it'll be processed, it'll have water quality treatment. It will have detention to slow down the release rate to emulate pre-existing conditions. So it will follow Kitsap County Code and Washington State Department of Ecology stormwater manual requirements. So before we leave this slide, this is a plan view. Again, it shows the outline of the project site. It shows the surrounding well logs that are available. And there's that section line AA. So if we go to the next slide, again, this is a graphic that was prepared by Aspect. So this is an elevation view as if you're looking at it from the side. So what's shown here in the middle, it's sort of hard to see, but the rest of it has been masked back a little bit. But the part that's a little bit brighter, that Christina is hovering over right now with her cursor, that is the project site. So there's, like I said, 3 borings that occurred there. And the rest of the borings that you see outside of there are publicly available data. So just real briefly, I want to go through what each color represents. Again, you can find this in the report that's on the project website. So the tan is the Vashon Till confining unit. Confining unit is a hydrogeologic term. The yellow is the Vashon Advanced Aquifer. And so that's sandy silt, cobbles, those types of things that were deposited during the Ice Age when the glaciers were advancing. So the green is the upper confining unit. It consists of silts, clays, about 160 feet thick. And then you've got this violet that represents the sea level aquifer. So I also wanted to draw your attention, again, they're small, but the blue triangles pointing down, that represents the static water levels. So static water level is defined as under normal, undisturbed, no pumping conditions. That's where the water level are in these wells. As opposed to the water table level in the soils that are saturated. They're more or less the same, but there are some subtle differences. All right, next slide, please. Critical Areas Update Technical Memorandum. This was prepared by OTAC, but it heavily references this 2020 Critical Areas Report prepared by Environmental Land Services. And that was prepared for the previous property owner before the county purchased the property. The previous property was RNS Tree Farms. And so what I want to point out in this graphic, again, it's a plan view. It shows the site, but kind of cocked a little bit. So you see that right, kind of pointing towards the upper right corner is the north arrow. But anyway, what you'll see at the bottom of the graphic in red is this category is wetland A. It's a category 2 riverine wetland with a 150-foot buffer. That's what that red area represents, the buffer and the wetland. Meanwhile, towards the center, upper left, is wetland C, which is a category 4 depressional wetland. It has a 50-foot buffer. So basically it has a lower, it's lower quality in terms of its ecological function as compared to wetland A. There's an unnamed stream. It's a tributary of Gamble Creek. You'll see it there as the cursor's hovering over it, and the green area represents the 150-foot buffer there. It's a type F fish-bearing stream as designated by OTAC. The earlier ELS report thought it was a non-fish-bearing stream, but through additional research by our scientists, we found the presence of cutthroat trout listed on the Department of Fish and Wildlife website. Plus, it also meets county code in terms of fish-bearing stream having like a 2-foot full bank width of the stream itself with less than a 16% gradient on the stream. Next slide, please. Cultural Resources Assessment. Who prepared it? Of course, Cultural Resource Consultants prepared it. It's a very generic name, but it goes straight to the heart of what they do. So this assessment was required by Executive Order 2102. It's required if you want to get a permit from, say, State Fish and Wildlife. It's certainly going to be required if there's any federal permits involved. So the key findings from it. What this picture represents here is some of the glass bottle scatter, basically broken glass, expected to be from, say, the 1890s to 1920s. So there was site reconnaissance done, there was desktop research, and no other cultural resources were identified. So the recommendations that come out of the report is it's not eligible for listing on historic registers. The site is. No additional cultural resources investigation is recommended at this time. A determination, no historic properties affected. However, if there's construction activities in the future in which there's cultural resources that are discovered, it points out that you need to halt work, contact the Department of Archaeological and Historic Preservation per their inadvertent discovery protocol. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Christina, and she can go in depth about the zoning memorandum.
Thanks, Jeff. So we OTAC performed zoning and comp plan research through the Kitsap County Code. And we found that the property is zoned Rural Employment Center. This is one of the implementing designations for the LAMERD designation that stands for local area of more intensive, or sorry, limited area of more intensive rural development. So this is one of a few properties as shown in the graphic on the top right. One of these brown zoned areas is, these are zoned REC, and these areas are intended to have a little bit more intensive commercial and light industrial type uses on them, consistent with what we're proposing. So our proposal, government services and facilities, is an allowable use, but the design of our facility does have to comply with applicable dimensional, landscaping, and parking requirements. So those are things like maximum allowable building height, maximum allowable impervious surface coverage, minimum landscaping, minimum setback requirements to bring buildings and improvements away from the property lines a bit. and then providing adequate employee parking and adequate parking for other kinds of vehicles that may be visiting the site. The project also has to comply with all applicable critical areas requirements. In this case, we know that there are wetlands and streams on the site, and also we are concerned with the critical aquifer recharge area regulations in this case. Our memo also documents our anticipated permit requirements. So we will be required to perform a SEPA review, SEPA environmental review. We will obtain a land use entitlement, and we'll also obtain our required construction permits.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up the key findings from the data collection and analysis phase. So like I said earlier, referring back to that schedule, we're closing in on the end of the site planning phase. So the activities we performed was confirming site and building program. So it's basically the plan and an inventory of the types of facilities that are needed on the site, both for hazardous, household hazardous waste and road maintenance facilities. And so we confirmed the preliminary programming done by TCF Architects. That was done some time ago. Mark and the team prepared 2 conceptual site alternatives. We have had some consultation with regulatory agencies. It's pretty much been limited to critical areas so far. And as far as the deliverables go, there's the site plan alternatives analysis tech memo. And we had a draft of that, submitted it to the county for their review a few weeks ago, August 4. So some of the things that it highlights the relative differences between the 2 site alternatives, kind of from the standpoint of different disciplines. It could be civil engineering, it could be landscape architecture, those types of things. It includes the decision matrix to help the team make a recommendation to the county, might help the county choose the preferred alternative, and it includes a relative cost estimate between the 2. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and he can go in more depth about the 2 site plan alternatives.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Yeah, we've developed 2 site plan alternatives, and the way they're laid out is conceptually the same between the 2 alternatives. So I'll go over that. They share a common spatial organization. On the northwest lower corner, a household hazardous waste facility that's placed there for proximity to Bond Road, visibility for residents to see. And that area is intended to be accessed by the public and used by them. There is a fencing that separates it from the remainder of the facility. And then on as far as vehicle access, all vehicles are intended to essentially come off of Gunderson Road to the south. Lamred Road is, or what's labeled as Lamard Road, future road, is a ride-in, ride-out situation for that road there. And then spatially, we have bulk materials as you come into the maintenance facility. That is the most active portion on the site. And so we've located that as far away from adjoining neighbors as our site boundaries would allow. And then to the north is the maintenance facility and administration area. At the center of the site is parking and vehicle storage and equipment storage. And that's the same between both alternatives. Wetland C, which you'll see at the center of the site, in alternative A, that is retained with some buffer averaging. We'll speak to that towards the end of our discussion here. And that is different from alternative B. And then on all the 2 alternatives, we've enhanced landscape buffer treatments along Bond Road. We've created additional areas to the north along Rover Road. And of course, respecting the 150-foot stream buffers as well to the east. We want to pull up the second alternative. Essentially, as I stated, the alternatives are similar. What alternative B does is creates more opportunities for the facility to grow as the population grows over time. And so the wetland C at the center of the site on this alternative has been, well, what we originally discussed was trying to mitigate for it on site. Now we're looking for opportunities off-site to take care of that, so we can speak to that as well. And then Christina, if you want to speak a little bit to the buffers and buffer the setbacks, that would be great.
Thanks, Mark. So buffers are a really important part of protecting critical areas, especially wetlands and streams. These are very valuable resources in the community, and the buffers do quite a lot to protect and enhance those resources. Not only do they slow and absorb stormwater, for example, but they also contribute organic matter into the water system. They provide shading, they provide nutrients, and so they do quite a lot. In our alternative A, we are proposing to retain wetland C here with its buffer predominantly intact. The buffers have some limited allowances within the Kitsap County Code for averaging. So what that means is that a limited amount of encroachment can occur at the fringes of the buffer, provided that that is compensated on other parts of the buffer. And when an applicant, in this case us, can demonstrate that there is no net loss of ecological functions and values associated with that, that is that the wetland and its buffer will continue to function as though averaging had not occurred. And then in both cases, we're proposing to not encroach at all into the stream buffer or the buffer here at wetland A. So this east side would be protected.
This is Jeff. I thought I might mention, so Mark talked about access off Mallard Road, how it's anticipated there's going to be right in, right out access onto Bond Road, otherwise known as State Route 307. However, Mallard Road does go to the southwest, and it will ultimately connect with the intersection of State Route 307 and Gunderson Road. So that's where we expect the predominant traffic flow to come from in and out of the site. So we will have to seek a right-of-way permit from the State Department of Transportation. And Christina, maybe you can mention the expectations of Kitsap County community development in terms of understanding the traffic in and out of this site.
Sure. So State Route 307 is under the jurisdiction of WSDOT, the Washington State Department of Transportation. So they're the ones ultimately who need to approve any changes to access. But the Kitsap County may require a traffic study to document potential traffic impacts. Certainly it's something that we will have to address through SEPA. So this is something that more information will be forthcoming.
So great. I want to be respectful of our time. We're half an hour into the presentation. We want to wrap up pretty soon before the Q&A. So unless there's anything else, Christina and Mark, you want to mention on these two slides, I think we can move on.
Yeah, that's good, Jeff. I think we're fine.
Sure.
So in terms of the site planning next steps, like I mentioned, the county has the draft alternative analysis tech memo. They're reviewing on it. They'll give us comments. They'll certainly consider external stakeholder comments, the audience here, other folks who want to weigh in on this project. County be selecting a preferred alternative. OTAC can then finalize that alternative analysis tech memo, and the selected alternative will be advanced to 30% design. So this is all part of the next steps. Next slide. 30% design phase be conducted this fall, late summer and fall. So we'll refine the selected site alternative. We'll develop the 30% design plans. We anticipate SEPA Environmental Review, State Environmental Policy Act, standing for SEPA, to occur early next year. The expected deliverables, anticipated deliverables, are the design report, which will include the plans, cost estimate, a stormwater report. We've got a preliminary report right now. And the design report will go into narrative from the different disciplines. It'll also refer to all the appropriate key findings and deliverables we talked about just a few minutes ago. Next. So kind of lump the 60, 90, and 100% design phases together on this one slide, but they are, different sub-phases. So we'll continue to refine those plans, go into much more detail on the plans, put together specifications, and come up with a construction quantity estimate, which will help contractors bid on the construction of this project. It shows the permitting, environmental through state, possibly federal permitting, anticipated to occur basically next summer and spring. Same thing for the land use permits, and construction permits are anticipated to be garnered in the fall of 2022. So like I mentioned, anticipated deliverables are construction contract documents that allow the county to solicit bids and ultimately award a contract for construction of the project. Next slide. Wanted Christina to go into a little more detail in terms of the open houses associated with the schedule.
Yes, so there are still quite a few opportunities for public engagement throughout this process. We mentioned at the beginning of our presentation that the first open house, which was really an information sharing kind of status to date update, was back in April, and here we are at our second open house in August. Going forward, we are planning to hold additional open houses when our preferred alternative has been advanced to 30% design. Again, when it's been advanced from 30% to 60% design, and at 90% design, and then prior to construction commencing. In addition to the open houses, there are some public comment periods that you'll be able to participate in. So we're proposing to start SEPA a little bit early after 30% design documents are available, and there's a public comment period associated with that. And you're very welcome and invited to submit comments during the SEPA environmental review process. I also mentioned earlier that we believe we'll need a land use entitlement that will have its own public comment period, and you are again invited to submit comments associated with that when the public notice of application goes out for that. And then, we're collecting comments on an ongoing basis. You can submit comments directly to Jacques Dean or Iric O'Neill. Their contact information is here. If you have called in, you can reach them at jdeen@co.kitsap.wa.us or eoneil@co.kitsap.wa.us. Or you can visit the project website to file a comment on our comment form online, and also to access all of the documents that we've spoken about today. And the project website is kcowa.us/NKSC. With that, we'll open it up for questions. I've got a few questions in the comment box. We'll take a couple of those, and then if you would like to make a verbal question or comment, go ahead and raise your hand or dial *9 if you have called in. Let's see, first question. When will the project go out for bid? Can you please repeat that?
So if you could refer back to the public engagement schedule slide, I think it's easier for people to see it that way. If memory serves correct, I believe this is the plan, that 100% design can be finished up as early as December of 2022. So ways to go. There's some other factors involved. Obviously, I don't want to speak on behalf of the county too much here. But once that's wrapped up, it typically takes about 2 or 3 months to get from advertisement of notice of call for bids to actually mobilizing to the site to begin construction. So construction would take place about the same time as that last public engagement period, which we hope to have the contractor available to answer any questions and speak with the county on basically the plans for construction.
And as we get closer to the 90 and 100% design phases, we'll be able to dial in the specific bid dates and anticipated start dates in a little more detail and certainty. So stay tuned, keep in touch with us, and we'll get more information as the project continues to develop. We have Nan Mader has raised her hand. Nan, go ahead and unmute yourself and make your comment or question.
Yeah, just a question on the Geotech graph that you showed. In that there are 2 major wetlands. Is that Geotech graph? Yeah, exactly. Is that across the whole site, or is that just on one particular area of the site?
So it shows the site location. It's kind of hard to see, but the part that is not screened back, kind of where Christina is hovering with her mouse right now, that's pretty much the project site. So, I mean, you'll see what looks like a valley there on the extreme right-hand part. So that does represent the stream.
Okay.
Can I just add to that really quickly?
Yes.
This graphic, it's a little confusing. It works with the graphic on the prior page. So you'll see this section AA here, and that is the section that this is showing. So this side of the graph is A, and this side of the graph is A prime. So this part is the part that crossed the center of our site. Oops, sorry about that. So that was this portion through the middle. So it's a representative example of soil profiles and water tables in the project area.
So the water tables are not necessarily, I mean, that isn't accurate for the water table across the whole site.
It's a representative image.
Okay, and then so back on that site where the circles are, I don't understand the where is this the site? I'm not able to read this. Which way is north? I mean, these are streams that are coming through or roads. So
this is the site. This dashed kind of,
that's the site right there in the middle.
This is the site.
Okay, all right, and that's fine.
It's a little difficult to read. So the roads are in a very faded gray. So this is Bond Road, this is Rova, and then down here is the Gunderson intersection.
Okay. I assume that. It's just there's no little creek on that one. That's why I was confused as to whether that was actually the site or the site was up. That's fine. I think that's all the questions I have.
Great, thank you. Then we've got some questions about the water on the site. I think these are all related. So the first question is, what gallons per minute will the well be on the site, or what the capacity of the well will be, and what is the anticipated water usage on the site? What testing was done? Oh, go ahead and answer those first two, and then I've got some additional water and well questions.
So Jacques, if I'm overstepping here, but there is water that has been brought to the site. The water main has been extended. to basically service not only this site, but adjoining parcels. So water will be coming from a water main.
That is correct. The water will be serviced through KPUD. So we will not have a well on the site. It will come from the well that's down near, it's up on the hill, down near the North Stottlemyre Bond Road intersection. It's to the west up on the hill there. So it's been piped directly to the Lambert. So it'll not only serve the county's parcel, but any other future development that occurs within that Lambert.
Thanks, Jacques. In terms of the volume of water, our subconsultant, Notkin is the subconsultant's name. They have a report that they put together in draft form, but it speaks to the water needs on the site. Again, it's for the buildings and other operational water. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but that is available. We can get that information. Christina, was there another part to that question?
Yes, I've got two more questions from the same interested party. So what testing will be done with adjacent wells within the boundary shown here? And then also, what is the capacity of the aquifer?
I don't know the capacity aquifer, but testing in our earlier slides, it was probably Christina who mentioned the critical aquifer recharge area. And Christina, why don't you give your assessment on those requirements and how this project will comply?
Sure. So the critical aquifer recharge area regulations are intended to protect the aquifer from potential contamination resulting from infiltration. So a lot of the restrictions for, they're called CARAs when they're abbreviated, a lot of the restrictions are based on use. In this case, the secondary containment measures that Jeff described earlier, such as liners for certain of our facility components, those would be compliant with the critical aquifer recharge area regulations to protect the aquifer from any potential contamination related to infiltration. Jeff, was that?
I think that's good. Yeah, so there may be some testing involved with we have some borings on site. There's one well. The county community development department may require some testing in the future, but we'll consult with them basically during the permitting phase.
Yes, that actually also responds to this question. So this question is, what is the plan for groundwater monitoring near the site? How far away will it be done and at what frequency? So it is possible that we would install a groundwater monitoring well. This will be determined once the site design is advanced a little bit further and in consultation with Kitsap County Planning Department. And they'll help us locate the groundwater monitoring well if it's required. And reporting is typically done annually if it is required. Our next question is, when and what will determine the choice of the preferred alternative?
So Jeff, I'll start out. We provided the draft technical report for alternatives analysis to the county. You're currently reviewing it. As I mentioned before, we'll certainly take into consideration external stakeholder comments that they receive. But Jacques, maybe you can give your assessment in terms of selecting a preferred alternative.
Sure. So we have, of course, a use with large equipment, storage needs, different operational functions that are necessary for the site. So we've got a pretty good feel for that now. We're still in the process of evaluating this 30% design and the various site alternatives. We're considering input from the public, from you that are in attendance at this meeting as well. And we just got to noodle on it and make a choice and make sure all, those factors are in play, that our operation will function adequately for now and in the future. And so those are the things of interest, and that will impact our decision.
Thanks, Jacques. Nan Mater has another question. Nan, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I did. Yeah, well, my question was about those two choices too, and I think that probably was answered. Is how are you asking the public to let you know which of those two alternatives we have to choose as long as you're going to be there?
Just to state your pros and cons, your feelings, your thoughts, as you read through the reports, that'll help you state your position and argument as well.
And those are
feedback.
Well, obviously, just from a environmental point of view, I don't think you can ever take something that Mother Nature's built and decide you can take it away from one site and build it somewhere else. I think that's always foolhardy. So I'm just wondering how the county's going to view that possibility of taking out that wetland sea and trying to move that somewhere else in the county or the state or wherever you decide it's going to be mitigated to. So
speaking to that, as you know, in previous discussions with me, it wasn't our intent to mitigate off-site. We were looking to mitigate on-site if we were going to affect wetland sea. But as we studied the site, the available site with the critical area setback to the stream and the wetlands and the enhanced buffers and just all the things you see on this screen here, we understood that, boy, it's going to be hard to mitigate it on site. So we searched for a mitigation bank, and surprisingly, there's just one down the road in the Gamble Creek watershed. So it would be, if we were to choose to mitigate off-site, it would be in the same riparian corridor. So we thought that was a benefit. We're not sold on mitigating wetland sea at this point. We're still evaluating, like I said before. But if we chose to, if we had to, because of inadequate operational or operational impacts, to not mitigating wetland sea, we have a site within the watershed to do it. It wouldn't be somewhere else in the state or even in the county. It would be within the Gamble Creek watershed.
Okay. Well, if I have a choice, and then, as I said, my feelings about the facility to begin with, but I certainly hope you'll at least keep wetland sea on the property. And I am pleased to see that you are finally recognizing that creek was fish bearing and that you've given it a bigger buffer. What's along the buffer between the site itself and the buffer zone for the creek, the line that on some of these looks wider in yellow? Yeah.
That's fencing.
Okay.
Is there still going to be a sheriff office on site?
I still need to have discussions with the sheriff and the county administrator. We're going to have a new sheriff as well, and so we just need to further discussions on that and get a affirmative yes or no. It's still up in the air at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Now, when you're talking about a sheriff's office, it wouldn't be a full-blown police precinct. It would be a place for a deputy to sit down and do some some paperwork. They've talked about having maybe office staff there for people to come in and file complaints or get gun permits. It's that kind of use. So it would be like one office space for those kind of functions. It would not be a precinct with a jail cell and things like that.
Just an administrative facility?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'd like to get back into the chat. Pedro from KEC asks, is there any chance that this facility could be designed and built as a total green facility? And Pedro, please raise your hand to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that you're referring to like a LEED certification or some other kind of green building certification that incorporates sustainability features. So Jeff and Jacques, please.
So yeah, kind of led by our architects. We've had conversations with Jacques and some other folks from the county. We wanted to acknowledge that, you know, it's a great aspirational goal to meet many green requirements. Obviously, there's a cost involved sometimes that could be offset by energy savings and that type of thing in the future. So, Jacques, I'm going to sort of paraphrase you a little bit here, but to the extent that we can and the county can afford it, we want to meet many of the substantive requirements of, you know, like LEED certification, salmon safe, those types of things. But some of those things come at a cost. So I'll stop there. And if Jacques, if you want to tag on to what I just said, please do.
Yeah, we've had several discussions about it. What Jeff says is true. There's other things as well. We have current sustainability, environmental policies in place. Waters as a resource is one, where we look to reuse water. We look to infiltrate it best we can, or for irrigation. We've had discussions with OTAC's architect about use of solar panels. We are going to plumb this site for electric vehicle use. There's all sorts of things that we will consider as we move forward, you know, through 30, 60, 90% design. You know, we got to consider cost as well. This is going to be an expensive facility, but we also want to take care of the environment while we do this. So I think we're all, you know, here at the county, we're all in favor of doing that, you know, so far as it makes sense. So we'll have a lot more discussions as we move forward.
Thanks, Jacques and Jeff. I've got a question also from Lisa asking to clarify the treatment of the wetland. She's said that the old plan was to mitigate the wetland. So maybe you can quickly summarize the two alternatives that are under consideration right now in the plans relative to wetland C.
So as Mark said before, the main difference between alternative A and B is alternative A leaves wetland C in its buffer alone, does some buffer averaging we propose. Wetland C does not. Obviously, alternative B does not leave wetland C and its buffer intact. Obviously gives more space. So in terms of, you know, if alternative A is the selected alternative by the county, you leave wetland C and its buffer alone. You stay out of there. Does anybody else want to clarify further on my statement?
I would just add to one thing that we have to consider, and I don't know if I spoke, or I don't think I did, is future growth. You know, under the alternative A, of course, and retaining wetland C, it restricts the site to what you see. Alternative B gives us a little more space for future growth. So we're still kind of noodling that. trying to understand what growth's going to be like in the future, and how, you know, road operations might be necessary to support that growth. So this alternative B, of course, gives us more usable space to grow into. So that's a factor that will also be, we need to decide when we make the decision.
So this is a really good question that Jacques or Eirik will be able to respond to. Will this recording and slide deck be available afterwards, and where will it be posted?
Yes,
it'll be posted. Go ahead, Eirik.
Sorry. Yeah, this is Eirik O'Neill, Outreach Coordinator, and the presentation and the Zoom recording will be posted on the project website. It's at the bottom of this page, kcowa.us/NKSC. If you go to that site tomorrow afternoon, you can find the presentation and the Zoom recording.
Now, Eirik, the previous meeting is also, the recording is also
That's
posted
correct.
there as well. Right?
Yes.
Thank you both. All right, we've got a couple more project-related questions. Does the environmental assessment include an evaluation of noxious weeds and weed containment associated with clearing the area? Gamble Creek specifically and other creeks in the area are awash in reed canary grass and other noxious weeds. Reed canary grass responds quite favorably to increased runoff and sedimentation.
Mark, you want to give that a shot? Talk about preserving the buffers and preserving, to the extent we can, forested areas and other areas that might be enhanced with landscaping.
Yeah, sure, Jeff. Thanks. Yeah, in the clearing of the site, essentially, the area we clear will become an impervious surface. So there really we're not creating new areas for vegetation or weeds to take hold. All of our stormwater is handled on site, you know, in vaults, and so. You know, there's not, as far as the buffers themselves, we're enhancing them with native vegetation. They're densely planted buffers, so I don't, with careful with care taken, I don't feel like a lot of invasives would come into the site as a result of this project.
So this, Jeff, there's please go ahead.
We work closely, the road department works closely with the noxious weed board and the noxious weed coordinator to manage noxious weeds within the right of way and on county property. We help fund that program. So she works very closely with my crew throughout the county to manage noxious weeds. So it would be a similar case here, just like it is on all county properties.
I have no further comment.
Okay. There's the need to clarify the larger site context. So I've got two questions asking why Mallard Road is labeled that instead of Gunderson Road. And I think we have maybe a larger site, like a vicinity map. So here we go. So just to clarify for folks, Mallard Road is an internal road that's proposed along the south side of the selected site. Gunderson Road is further south. So for what you're seeing on the site concepts, it just doesn't extend this far. The extent doesn't extend this far south. So when you're seeing Mallard Road, it is a new road that is to be constructed here along the south side of the property that provides access within this larger REC zone area.
To clarify that though, Christina, it will connect to Gunderson Road just to the west of the northeast down at Gunderson Road. So it'll come down and turn 90 degrees and run right down there. You can see the shaded area right below your arrow is an existing approach that's already been constructed. So it'll connect there as well. And Jeff mentioned previously that that'll be the primary access route for crew leaving the site, because it's a safe, controlled intersection. It has a traffic signal there. And so we'll have full movement capability at that intersection, where the access to Bond Road will be a right in, right out. And so, you know, if we need to go south towards Paulsville, we won't use the Bond Road connection. We'll use the Gunderson connection. If we were heading towards Kingston, then we may choose to use the Bond Road connection, because a right out will be allowed.
So
Jacques, if I could just follow up on that, just for the clarity. So that's really meant to be an internal roadway to service the commercial area, not to be a public road that would have folks kind of utilizing that to not utilize the lighted intersection.
right, sorry, go ahead.
It is intended to be a county roadway.
Okay.
We made that determination some time ago, but we'll have to, again, it's only going to be a right in, right out. We'll have to sign it. You know, I've talked to our traffic engineer a little bit about it, and we'll have to figure out appropriate signage so that we don't have that issue. But it is intended to be a county roadway.
Okay.
So at this point, I don't have any more hands raised. I have one question, but the person asking it had to drop off early and requested an email response follow-up. So I don't have any other questions or comments at this time. If anyone else has any follow-up questions or comments, or wants to just state a preference for alternative A or alternative B, now would be a great time to do that. Or if there's any topics that you'd like us to revisit from the presentation. I see Nan Mader has raised her hand. Nan, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Opting for choice A.
Thank you. All right, I'm not getting any other comments or questions, and I'm not getting any other raised hands.
Well, this is Jeff. So with that, we mentioned that there is public open house number 3 that is scheduled for later this fall. I should say it's scheduled. It's planned for later this fall. We hope to share with you more detailed plans on the selected site alternative. And again, welcome your feedback. It's great having people engaged in the process. So on behalf of OTAC, thank you for attending. Jacques, would you like to wrap it up?
Oh, I'm sorry
Sure.
to interrupt. Nan has raised her hand again for an additional comment. Is that all right?
Yes.
Nan, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Please continue to U.S. mail the notices of these meetings to the neighboring residences.
Okay.
Thanks, Nan. last call, comments, questions, raise hands.
Christina, this is Andrew Nelson. I would just like to take the opportunity to thank the OTEC team for the great work so far. A lot of really good analysis in the site work and the studies that have been completed to date. I would like to invite the public to share this information with their neighbors and others that may be interested. Help us to spread the word about this project, and public comment is very important. And so the comment opportunities on our project page that Eric O'Neill has referred to will be available for everybody as we go through this process. So if you didn't feel comfortable or didn't want to make a comment tonight, everybody's invited to make those comments on our project site. And so we can include your thoughts in our decision process. So thanks everybody for participating tonight, and we'll look forward to the next discussion with you.
Thanks, Andy. And then just to remind everyone, this presentation and the slide deck will be posted and available tomorrow. Feel free to share the link with any of your interested neighbors or friends, and feel free to reach out to the project team. The contact information is on the screen right now. Feel free to call or send an email or file a comment electronically on the project website that is shown here.
Okay, I thank everyone for attending, and again, check our web page for information. We're updating it as we develop or finalize studies and develop information. And look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Good night.
Good night.